Welcome back again to Joe Stunner Boxing, or should I call it Dane Bowers Boxing? Because a few people have said recently, over the last few days, you look like Dane Bowers. And I didn't know the fuck Dane Bowers was. So I did what we all do. I went to Google, and apparently he was in a boy band about 20 years ago or something. And he also made a sex tape with Katie Price, which, if I'm being honest, is only marginally better than making a sex tape with Harvey Price. But anyway, enough waffle. Let's talk some boxing. And I was very sad to read that the former WBA heavyweight champ, Bruce Seldon, has hit hard times. Apparently, he's living in a homeless shelter in New Jersey, Newark. And I think a friend of his, a guy called Danny McDermott, who I don't know, I've never heard of the guy, he was making people aware that Bruce has hit hard times. He's on Skid Row, basically, and he was trying to rustle up a bit of money just to get Bruce a flat or an apartment, whatever you want to call it. And I mean, Seldon is probably best known for the phantom punch against Mike Tyson, where he just surrendered his WBA belt without really being hit. And people said, "Oh, he was paid off. The fix was in." And always, I don't think so. If I had to guess, and of course it's only a guess, I would say that Seldon probably was so scared in that fight that at the first opportunity he threw himself on the floor because he was so intimidated to get out of the fight. And in fact, he had a bit of form for this because he was also knocked out in one round by Riddick Bowe earlier on in his career. And it was a kamikaze effort against Bowe. He threw himself at Bowe. And Bowe at the time was pretty much in his prime, very skillful, beautiful punches, such a wasted talent, Riddick Bowe, which is strange to say because he was undisputed heavyweight champ, but his prime should have been much, much longer. But he kind of threw his talent away, a lot of it anyway, with bad living. But anyway, he knocked out Seldon, and Seldon, I always remember in that fight, because I'm of a certain age, I followed Seldon pretty much from the start of his career. I remember him being on the floor against Bowe and then jumping up like a jack-in-a-box. And it was almost like he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't have any tactics. He was scared. He was intimidated. It was a kamikaze effort. He was clipped. He was on the floor. Shall I stay down? Shall I get up? What the hell? I'll get up. And he had that mental block where he could be intimidated by big punches. But if you look at his record, he finished with 40 wins, 36 KOs, which is not bad, although the quality of the opposition was not great. He had 8 defeats, 7 by stoppage or knockout, and no draws. And for a long while, he was kind of brought along as a bit of a prospect, being groomed as a potential champ. And I think it was only his 6th fight, he fought Ezra Sellers, who actually was making his debut, and knocked Sellers out in 2 rounds. And Sellers himself went on to have, a good career. He had some very exciting fights, very big puncher, Sellers, but too small to take on Seldon. Seldon wasn't that tall. He was about 6'1.5", 6'2", but he was very, very stocky and powerful, quite muscle-bound, actually. And he then went on and, beat people like Ozzy Ocasio, who was way, way past his best and was just picking up a few paychecks. David Bay was another one. Jose Revolta, who was ancient at the time. And then he bumped into Oliver McCall, Mr. Steel Jaw himself, one of the best chins, I think, ever in boxing. And McCall ground him down and stopped him in 9 rounds. At the time, McCall only had 15 wins and 4 defeats. He was never, ever stopped. I don't think he was off his feet. Maybe once he was towards the end of his career, McCall. But he fought until he was about 50. And just one of the toughest men you've ever seen. And then he had then Seldon had the Bowe fight. So that was 2 back-to-back losses by KO. And after the Bowe fight, it looked like he was finished, but he kind of rebuilt a little bit, beat a very old Jesse Ferguson. I mean, all his best names, Seldon, on his record were against guys who were just basically finished or just way over the hill. But he strung together, victories over very modest opposition. Mike Dixon was one of them, I remember. Then he lost a unanimous decision to Tony Tubbs, and everyone thought, Tubbs himself was getting pretty old. I think he knocked Seldon down early in, I think, the first round, second round. I think it was the first round, actually. I don't know. Can't remember. Anyway, I remember that fight. Tubbs was very, very skillful, outboxed Seldon, put him on the floor and outpointed him. But Seldon kept on beating up, no-hopers and people who were way past their best. Greg Page, I think he stopped in about 9, 8, 9, 10 rounds. And somehow he eventually got a shot for the vacant WBA heavyweight title against Tony Tucker, who at the time was 52 wins and 2 defeats. And Tucker was a big favourite in that fight to stop Seldon. But in actual fact, Seldon scored his best win because Tucker was no spring chicken, but he still had something left. But Tucker got a swelling under one of his eyes and got pulled out after 7 rounds on his stool. And suddenly Seldon found himself as the WBA heavyweight champ. And he defended it successfully once against Joe Hipp, who was a Native American heavyweight. A reasonable fighter. Had quite a glossy record, but didn't beat many good people and many big men. But he could fight a bit. Wasn't a bad defence. He stopped Joe Hipp in 10 rounds. And then he had the Tyson fight and was humiliated himself, depending on which way you want to look at it. He then had 8 years out, Seldon did, and came back. And he'd win a couple, then lose a couple. He beat Otis Tinsdale. He lost by stoppage to Gerald Nobles when Nobles was undefeated. He was 22-0 at the time. And he also got beaten by Ty Fields, who was a massive white heavyweight, not very good. Nobles was nothing special either. But Fields stopped Seldon in 2 rounds. And then Seldon came back again and beat Marcus Rhodes. And he got stopped in 5 by Kevin Johnson when Johnson was undefeated. And his final fight was in 2009. He got stopped in 9 rounds by Freza Kendo. So he had this sort of up and down second career 8 years after being humiliated by Tyson. And it was, win a couple, lose a couple. I guess he was just collecting paychecks. But clearly any money that he made from winning that WBA title and defending it a couple of times and the big Tyson fight, which you would think would be a very big purse, it went by the wayside, as it does with many boxers who don't really understand money. And now he's living in a shelter. It's quite sad. I always think those tales are quite sad. His friend who posted the story, this Danny McDermott guy, said Bruce doesn't take any drugs or drink. He's just hit hard times. Maybe he just can't manage his money. But Bruce Seldon, the Atlantic City Express, he called himself, did score some good wins against very old opposition, recognisable opposition, but old opposition. And it is a shame when we hear this because, boxers give so much to us in terms of entertainment, but sometimes they're their own worst enemy. The victim or the person they beat up the most is themselves very often. But that's Bruce Seldon for you. So just thought I'd update you on that. He's got this GoFundMe page going now. His mate has. Google it, and if you want to donate some money to him. But any thoughts, leave them below. As always, thank you for your time. Hit the subscribe button and please hit the like button as well, and I will read your comments and I'll answer as many as I possibly can. All right, thanks a lot then. Bye for now. Take care of yourselves.